But now to regional Victoria and the latest crisis engulfing Australia's TV industry.
In just a few hours' time, Network 10's free-to-air television signal in the Victorian town of Mildura will be switched off for good, and it's prompting fears other regional TV stations might follow.
That shutdown of 10's digital signal will affect 70,000 people, and it's one that's driven by simple economics, because broadcasting it has been a money loser since day one.
Facing falling advertising revenue, rising costs and running at a loss, Mildura Digital Television is ceasing operation. They'll hand their licence back to the government and the 10 signal will go black.
So, what will it mean? 10's The Project, predictably perhaps, was sounding the alarm.
Very sad.
I think it's actually really terrible.
It's really disappointing.
It's just another disadvantage for our area.
But it's not all doom and gloom. While viewers in Mildura won't be able to get Network 10 via their aerials, they will still be able to receive the signal via a smart TV and the 10 Play app. For some, of course, that may mean a new TV. And 10's The Project was suggesting...
Next in the firing line, regional WA, the NT and all of Tassie.
Which would affect more than 1 million people, with WIN's CEO Andrew Lancaster concluding that without government help, regional broadcasters might no longer be able to
provide a voice to regional Australia through local news, local advertising opportunities and supporting local community groups and charities.
But that problem for the regions is just part of a much bigger crisis facing the TV industry, as recent headlines have made clear.
Axe swings at 7 West Media with 150 jobs to go.
9 Entertainment to cut 200 jobs as Meta content deal ends. Massacre!
Australian television's darkest day points to an industry in total chaos.
And once again, there are suggestions that one of the 3 commercial networks, Channel 10, may not survive, with Queensland University of Technology's Anna Potter, a professor in digital media, warning...
I think the question of whether the Australian market can sustainably continue to support 3 broadcasters is more relevant than ever.
So, is it really that bad? Yes, says media analyst Peter Cox, who told MediaWatch...
I think they're in a death spiral.
While media commentator Tim Burrows was calling it the most brutal week since Fairfax and News Corp cut more than 3,000 jobs between them in 2012, saying the TV industry is now experiencing
its own print moment.
So, what is happening and why? First, TV ad revenue is plummeting, down 11% from the previous year across the free-to-air channels. As respected TV analyst Steve Allen told MediaWatch...
There's been very few times in television's history in Australia where the revenue has dropped in double digits.
In a sluggish economy, companies are cutting back. But revenue is also going elsewhere. Television used to be the go-to for advertisers. Now it is number 2 behind online, with the industry's share of ad revenue collapsing from $7.7 billion in 2007 to $3.8 billion in 2021, with online now accounting for more than half of all ad spend. But free-to-air TV is also losing audiences. While 7 and 9 battle it out to be number 1 in the ratings, they're fighting over a smaller prize, with 13% of Metro viewers deserting last year and paying to stream movies and shows like these instead.
Dearest gentle reader.
The enemy usurped my throne.
And why wouldn't they be? Homemade drama on the commercial networks has been declining for 2 decades, with the number of hours going from around 500 in the year 2000 to just 116 hours last year. The slide accelerating since drama quotas were cut back in 2020. And the bulk of that drama coming in just 2 shows.
59% of the 116 hours were Neighbours and Home and Away, which over the last 20 years have lost as many as half of their Australian viewers.
And with commercial networks all but abandoning drama, fresh Australian stories are ending up behind a paywall, like Paramount Plus's new series Fake, featuring Ashton Kutcher and David Wenham.
Oh, he's gorgeous.
Do you have a boyfriend?
I think so.
Away from adult drama, the situation for kids' TV on the commercial networks is even worse. According to QUT, it has
declined from 33 hours in 2020 to 0.
Which, in turn, equals fewer eyeballs, as the ABC's Behind the News was reporting in May.
Do you watch free-to-air TV?
Not anymore, no.
Yes, I do.
Sometimes, but mainly not.
Same here sometimes, mainly not. No.
In 2011, teenagers spent on average 75 minutes a day watching commercial television. Now it is 13 minutes. So if advertisers want to reach young people, why on earth would they go to 7, 9 or 10? Abandoning children, movies and drama sees the networks relying on old favourites for its ageing audience.
Now they're really left with news, sport and lots of game shows because game shows are very low cost.
And now technological change is even threatening their iron grip on sport. Last week, despite a months-long campaign by the free-to-air networks,
they want you to pay to stream your favourite sports.
There goes our tax cuts.
Parliament declined to amend the anti-siphoning laws to ensure that all Australians have access to sport on free-to-air TV, with the Nine Papers warning that millions of Australians who view live sport via an internet connection could be blocked from viewing events such as the NRL and AFL Grand Finals for free. We'll see if that comes to pass. So, what do the networks have to say about the state they're in? Before jetting off to Greece, Nine Entertainment boss Mike Sneesby emailed staff to say the company was not immune to the economic headwinds impacting many businesses globally. He said 200 jobs had to go because of that weak advertising market and loss of funding from Facebook owner Meta. The response was blunt.
Fuck Mike Sneesby.
9 staff incensed at mass job cuts.
So, what now for Australia's 3 commercial networks? QUT's Anna Potter is not optimistic, telling MediaWatch the networks have failed to adapt to the on-demand market and that not even the government can save them in the long run.
There is arguably not enough advertiser money being spent in television broadly to support the sector. Australians would likely be better served with 2 or even just 1 commercial broadcaster that could afford to spend more on programming.
Well, Steve Allen says the networks need to work together if they want to survive.
Every couple of years, they start fighting each other, and that's when other platforms come in and eat their lunch. They need to be united in marketing the benefits of television.
With Allen arguing that TV is still the most powerful way for brands to get mass exposure. And the commercial networks will be hoping he's right because their future depends on it.
And a lonely walk for the Western Australian Senator.
I'm torn, deeply torn.
Who crossed the floor to support Palestinian statehood.
With a heavy heart, but a clear conscience, I announce my resignation from the Australian Labour Party.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to MediaWatch. And there's nothing that gets the Canberra Press Gallery fired up like a supposed act of political treachery, with 29-year-old Labour Senator Fatima Payman cast as the villain after she dared to cross the floor and vote against the party over recognising Palestinian statehood, with Payman then quitting the ALP to sit on the crossbench and her hometown paper declaring,
"From the river to the sea."
While East Coast front pages went big on the young Afghan-born senator's act of defiance.
Payman turns back on ALP.
Payman storms out on elbow.
Payman walks.
And in a reminder of how brutal Labour is to anyone who betrays the party line, the ALP then set about backgrounding journalists against her to produce this banner front page in The Australian on Friday.
Citizenship revenge.
Labour targets rebel.
With the paper reporting that senior Labour figures, no names, no pack drill, have been
raising Fatima Payman's Afghan citizenship as a risk to her remaining in the Senate because of a potential breach of Section 44 of the Constitution.
This is despite WA Labour telling all and sundry before the last election that they had looked into it and there was absolutely no problem.
The ALP has obtained legal advice from senior counsel, and we are confident that Ms Payman is eligible to sit in the Australian Parliament.
Which is why Seven's Natalie Barr was right to ask,
why would senior Labor MPs now be backgrounding journalists and saying, oh, she might not be allowed in?
Political bastardry is the answer. With Crikey reporting last Thursday,
there is no end in sight to the vicious backgrounding, with the media awash with spin suggesting she planned this, that she's being used, that Labour showed her nothing but kindness, or that this will lead to an increase in Islamophobia.
And many in the media were happy to channel the ALP's outrage that its ironclad rule on caucus solidarity was being breached by an ungrateful first-term Muslim senator, with news.com.au's Samantha Maiden penning a couple of narky exclusive stories about the rebel senator, saying she couldn't quit Canberra because she needed the MP's allowance to fund her investment property. and revealing that she had donated at least $300 to an Islamic TV studio that didn't like the Barbie movie because it pushed a feminist perspective. And on the ABC, Patricia Karvelas was reporting that Payman's Labour caucus colleagues were concerned about claims that she was being guided by God, with that Labour dog whistle soon picked up and blown even louder by Sky's Andrew Bolt.
Her preaching of victimhood today, you know, no one knows victimhood like a Muslim woman, this Muslim woman, a refugee from Afghanistan.
With Bolt channeling the Prime Minister 2 days earlier by saying Payman somehow poses a threat to the unity of the nation.
She's now part of a very dangerous shift in our politics. In fact, it's moves to create a new Muslim political party. You just think how that would tear us apart.
And Andrew Bolt is dedicated to uniting Australians? Seriously. And when Payman faced the media pack to explain why she was quitting, the AFR's Andrew Tillett lobbed the Muslim question yet again by asking,
can you elaborate, Senator, on what the suggestion that you're being guided by God in your decision-making, and will you campaign on sort of other Islamic Muslim type of issues?
I don't know how to respond to that question without feeling offended or insulted, that just because I'm a visibly Muslim woman that I would only care about Muslim issues. This topic on Palestinian recognition, but Palestinian liberation, is a matter that has impacted everyone with a conscience. It is a matter that's not just a Jewish versus Muslim issue. This is a matter about humanity.
A message that was lost in the storm by a media mob that seems more concerned about political warfare and Labour Party rules than the right to freedom of expression in Parliament, and who almost entirely ignored the moral calculus on the war in Gaza that Payman says compelled her to speak out. And finally, to Britain and a political earthquake that for once the polls predicted.
Oh, my God.
With Friday's front pages across Britain all declaring a Labour landslide. And across hours of election night coverage, the message was the same.
It's an earthquake.
It is a Tory bloodbath. That is not overplaying it.
This is going to be an evening remembered for 100 years.
Meanwhile, GB News was hosting an election party live from Essex, where Nigel Farage was elected to Parliament for the first time and getting Reform voters to celebrate their gains.
What about Reform then? So now apparently...
So, what else was making history? Well, for the first time in nearly 2 decades, Rupert Murdoch's The Sun was endorsing Labour, although not actually uttering the words on its front page in declaring,
"Time for a new manager,"
and grudgingly conceding in an editorial,
by dragging his party back to the centre, Sir Keir has won the right to take charge.
The Sun famously bragged in 1992, when the Tories swept to power,
"It's the Sun what won it."
And Rupert Murdoch does love to back the winner, because only governments have the power to grant him favours. But supporting Starmer must still have hurt, because back in 2012, when he was DPP, Starmer brought phone hacking charges against Rebekah Brooks, the current boss of News UK, and a dozen of her former colleagues at the News of the World. And one insider told iNews in May,
"It would be absolutely shocking if Rupert endorsed Starmer."
So, how much help would his blessing have been? Not so much. Back in 1997, when the Sun switched to Labour after a lifetime of Tory support, the tabloid was selling 4 million copies a day. Now it's reckoned to be down to just 600,000, with David Cameron's former communications director, Craig Oliver, telling the BBC's media show,
newspaper readership is dropping like a stone. It tends to be older people, so the influence they have is just not what it once was.
Despite being destined to lose, 6 major papers, including the Daily Express, told readers to vote Tory. But none urged people to back Reform, with the Daily Mail warning, vote Farage, get them being Labour. And the major parties dominated the mainstream media coverage during the 6-week campaign, which caused Farage to complain that his party was not being given a fair go, even on GB News, the station that employed him as a commentator.
The problem we've had is getting some of the messages out through GB News, ITV, and I can't even talk about the BBC.
Well, we do. We cover all the views of the main parties.
You have given us a tiny amount of coverage.
But on social media, it was a very different story, with Reform gaining 3 times more engagement than its major party rivals, even though it spent far less. And that engagement helped Farage's party win 14% of the vote and take 5 seats, a result that should bring Reform more media attention at the next election, because the party's share of the vote governs the coverage it gets. And in a campaign where a Tory thrashing looked certain, how did the media keep voters engaged? The Sun recruited Honey, the African tawny eagle, who predicted the Tories' Rishi Sunak would emerge victorious from the Sun's election debate. They're not called bird-brained for nothing. While Jemima Packington, an asparagus psychic, also known as an asparamancer, who uses asparagus spears to tell the future, yes, really, was giving cracking predictions like this on ITV only 2 months ago.
Can I give you an exclusive?
Please.
Yes. Keir Starmer will not lead the Labour Party into the next general election.
He won't be the leader?
Absolutely.
The asparagus has told you that?
Yes.
Goodness me.
Goodness me, indeed. And for what it's worth, she's tipping England to win Euro 24. She may well have better luck with that. That's all from us for tonight. Don't forget Media Bites on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram. But for now, until next week, goodbye.